I'm excited to do this video because this is one I've wanted to touch on with this kind of style. It's just that right now, because of the season change, I'm currently coming down and getting sick right now. So I'm in the beginning stages of it all. I only get sick 2 times throughout the year. During the winter to spring season, normally in that change, and normally from summer to fall are the only 2 times I actually end up getting sick, is when the seasons change. Normally when it comes to winter, just normally in the winter, normally in the summer, or any of the 4 seasons, I'm fine. It's just when they change those 2 times, I get sick. I'm fine the rest of the year. It's just when that happens. Welcome, another Thursday. Gear Talk, as always. You saw the title. You saw who won the last poll. Today, I've been waiting for this one. Swam versus Locusts in a head-to-head clash. Going to take a look at all of their pretty much army statistics, who's in it, different units, all of that, and see who will come out on top in a one-on-one or army-on-army fight against these 2 factions. Now, I do want to apologize if my voice starts cracking or something happens because, again, I am starting to get sick. So take it with a grain of salt when I start doing the actual analysis on everything and I get in depth, because it's messing with my head. I got a fever right now. I've got a bad cough. I've been cutting in and out. That last cut was so I could cough. So anyway, let's get into it. I actually had to write down a lot of notes just to get all the info, because you've got these 2 going against each other. And for this, the Swarm is going to be at the end of Gears of War 4. Now, I do have to say this, though. At the end of 4, I do have included in here for what we're going to go over, I have the Swarm Beast. Now, at the end of 4, obviously, the Swarm Beast is taken out. I am going to count it just because I feel that the Swarm do have the capabilities of creating another Swarm Beast if they want to. I also have down on here, and we'll get to these, the Hive Mind. Now, I have that, even though Reyna is now deceased and she's gone. Spoilers if you haven't finished 4 yet. But I feel like even without Reyna, there's like a pseudo Hive Mind connection kind of between all of the creatures that are a part of the Swarm somewhat. Not to a high standard, but like you heard Marcus when he was in the pod, he could hear the others in his head and everything. Now, Reyna was already hooked up, but I feel like he could still have somewhat the same effect to a lesser degree if he wasn't in a situation where Reyna was also hooked up. Now, for the Locusts, this one I chose, we're going to use the Locusts, E-Day Locust, when they first popped out, because that was the first time humanity dealt with them, just like the one night that takes place in 4 is the first time humanity dealt with the Swarm. So, with those 2, I'm going to be going over, and I got to jump out my notes for this one. So, for this, it's going to go through each of their different type of units and distance of fighting, kind of. We have the long-range battle, the mid-range battle, the close-range battle, the infantry and soldiers on who's fighting on what side and how those will stack up against each other. Then we have the large units, and finally we'll have the leaders or the leadership of each of the sides, and we'll see which one is superior to the other, and in the end, who would win in a fight between these 2. Now, starting off, we're just going to jump right into the long-range fight. Now, for this, I had to use some things twice, or some things without the other, kind of, just because of the fact that it's set up to be kind of like that. Like, for instance, how do I put it? If I can find it in my notes here, the Canker. What's shot off by pretty much and I gotta look up the names because I wrote them everywhere when I was going through it all. When the carrier shoots off the Cankers. The carrier is pretty buff and beefy, so I have him in a close range fight too. But I also have the Cankers as long distance, because they can be shot off and they can go quite a ways. Now, I'm not putting snipers or anything into this, because that's going to be safe for infantry and what they can do and how those stack up. So, for the Swarm, I have for long range, I have it written everywhere, so give me a moment to find it. I have the Canker for the Swarm against the Nemesis and the Cedars. I don't know why I was going to say Feeders for the Locust. Now, it might seem unfair that I'm categorizing both of them separately and I'm not putting the carrier in there, but the issue is that the carrier doesn't really have anything he can do from long range. He can shoot out the Cankers, but that's all he can do. There's no other ability. Cedars, while they shoot out Nemesis, they don't just shoot them into the sky. They can shoot those as actual literal cannon fodder. They can shoot them out as a cannon. Now, if a canker and a cedar were to collide, I would feel that the canker would come out still intact and the cedar would be destroyed. But the issue is with the cedar, I should have said nemesis, not the cedar. With the cedar shooting off, the power of how hard they're going to hit is different. If they're flying down from the sky, that's a different velocity. If they're shot from a cedar itself, I want to guess it's going to be more powerful. So when it comes to long range, I put the Locust with their cedars as the winner. I feel like the cankers will beat the nemesis, but when it comes to the cedar itself, I think it can do a lot more damage than just a nemesis by itself. Next up, I have mid-range. Now this one was a little harder because mid-range for the Locust is a little odd because they do have mid-range, don't get me wrong, but it's not like they have a large variety, and neither do the Swarm, but the Swarm are new to all this, so I didn't expect a lot of variety from them. For the Swarm, I have the Snatcher as a mid-range combatant because the Snatcher is able to shoot off those quills, and I feel like it has a lot more mid-range capabilities than just close range. And going against that with the Locusts, I have here the Boomer and the Grinder. Now, there are other variations to things, but these are like the base variations that we normally have. So, when it comes down to it, I feel in this matchup, I think the Snatcher comes out on top because when you see him shoot off those quills, it acts as a paralyzer, or it acts as kind of like a quick shot sniper kind of effect that'll take down an enemy. While the Boomer and the Grinder are both going to have heavy artillery, I feel like if they get hit with one of those, they're going down. And it's already shown a Snatcher can take quite a bit of damage before it actually goes down itself. Not saying the Boomer and the Grinder don't, but a Snatcher you have to unload, and they're moving around a bit. A Grinder and a Boomer are not going around that much. They're going to stand and shoot. So I feel in the end, if it came down to it, I feel that the Snatcher would take down that kind of opposition. And I'll say this right now. I'm taking the size quality of those armies into account. The Locust has a vast higher number than the Swarm at this point. But I do feel, even if you had, let's say, like 10 Grinders and Boomers and 4 Snatchers, I think those 4 Snatchers would come out on top and end up taking down those 10. If not killing them, at least paralyzing them, or at least like a quick mid-shot snipe into the head or something like that. I think the Snatcher has a better shot of taking down the Boomer and Grinder than any other force the Swarm really has. Now, when it comes to close range, this one got really bloody when it comes down to who's going in for the close range fight. Now, I have here, for the Swarm, you've got the carrier itself is going to end up getting close range at some point. Because after the carrier shooting off the cankers, it's going to go charging in there, and it's going to become a front force fighter. I also have the Juvies. Obviously, Juvies are going to be pouncing in there. They're going to be doing their thing like we've seen the Juvies before in Gears of War 4. Then I also have the Pouncers. Now, the Pouncers are interesting. I don't want to put them as a mid-range because they really do seem like they're more built for a front-range fight. Now, what they're up against, and this one's going to be a bloodbath. For the Locust, I've got Tickers, Maulers, Wretches, Butchers, and Berserkers are down here. Okay, I have to say this right now. The Locusts win. It doesn't matter who's running in on them or anything. If even a carrier, if a carrier gets hit by a Ticker, let's say like 4 Tickers run into a carrier, I don't think that carrier is going to have too much HP left. He's not going to be up and running around that much. The Berserker itself is going to destroy every Juvie with just a step. And when it comes to the Pouncer, it's going to have a hard time catching up to a Pouncer, but I don't think the Pouncer has the ability to really harm a Berserker. So it's really just a matter of time until the Berserker can actually land a hit. And let's say everyone runs in there and the front forces are taken out for the Swarm. They're going mid-range next. They're running straight into a line. They're not jumping around. Next up is the mid-range. They're going after them. After the mid-range, they're jumping onto long range. So when it comes to this, Locust win hands down in a close one-on-one, well, army and army fight when it comes to the Swarm and the Locust. Next up, we have the Infantry itself going against one another. This is where the bulk of everything is going to be. because when it comes down to like these different ranges and everything, these are like specialty units, you could say. These are the guys who are going through, these are the base guys that are being sent out to fight. These are the guys you're given the basic Lancer, the Hammer Burst, and they're out there shooting. Now, for the lineup, I've got for infantry for the Swarm, the drones, and there's a whole plethora of them, and the Scions. And then for the Locust, again, they have their own plethora of drones, then the Therons, and then the Cantus. Now, this one was really hard up until a point. When it comes down to the Swarm, the Scions are very hard to take down. Harder than a normal drone. I'd even say harder than a boomer at times. I would easily say the Scion is probably up there with a Theron guard for a one-on-one. That's a definite. They're not going against the normal grunts. This is going to be the big boys clashing it out. When it comes to the drones, I would have to go onto the side of probably saying the Locusts for the drones, just because there's so many options from there, and we haven't seen that many yet for the Swarm. Therons and Scions, I kind of got to give it to the Scions. But the one thing that broke this all was the moment you throw Cantus into this. When you get a Cantus out there, he's healing. He's got decent firepower. He can take a few shots. The Cantus is the real problem at this point. He's healing Theron. He's healing drones. And I don't think that the Swarm can really keep up with their enemies keep getting back up. Now, don't get me wrong. They blow off a Theron head. He ain't getting up. But if they gravely wound him, or he's still got a heartbeat and he's down, he's getting back up, and it turns on to, instead of like a Cantus and a Theron versus one Scion, instead of turning into a one-on-one, he heals him up, it's a two-on-one all over again. And I do think at that point they can take down the Scion. So I am going to side with saying that the Locust would win with their infantry. Alright, now for the big boys, the really big boys. These are the large units. These are the guys who are, I don't want to say the backbone of everything, but if they take down the big guns, you really don't have a large defense. You have your basic infantry and your specialty units, like the close, mid, and long rangers, but you don't have anything else for backup. You took down the biggest shots you had, and now you have to get through and nitpick through the other guys. So, when it comes to this, for the large units, when it comes to the Swarm Axe and the Hive Beast, this is where I place the Hive Beast in everything. And when it comes to the Locusts, there are Brumacs, Reavers, Corpsers, and I was going to put down like the creatures that a lot of the generals have, like Shibboleth, the Wraith, the Tempest, but I felt like when it comes to that, like Karn's going to have Shibboleth with him. He's not going to separate Shibboleth to go and do something else. They're a two-man team. So it's just going to be the Brumacs, Reavers, Corpsers, and they're going to be going against the Swarm Axe and the Hive Beast. Now, this one was a difficult one too, because of the fact that the Swarm Axe is very heavily defended. If you play the other games from 1 to 3, you understand that a Brumac can be taken down by conventional means with firearms. You don't need to worry about firing Hammer of Dawns or anything. Like if you're fighting a Berserker or something, you can take down a Brumac with just guns. It takes a long time, but you can do it. When it comes to the Swarm Axe, you really can't do that as far as we've seen. The crystals are definitely too thick to get through, and when it comes to an actual fight, you need to come up with some special ways to take it down. Now, the goddamn Hive Beast. This thing is huge. Stories tall by what the wiki said. If you want to take this thing down, you need to be prepared. You need a giant tank at some point. And guess what? We had a walking tank at one point with the rotators from the I can't remember the name of the helicopters at the top of my head. But they went into there and started chopping off tentacles left and right. Now, in a fight with just the large infantry against one another, if we had to decide a winner between this, the Swarm Axe versus the Brumacs. Again, the Locusts have numbers on their side. They don't have an infinite amount of Brumacs, don't get me wrong. There's only a limited amount. But there's definitely more Brumacs than there are Swarmacs. Or Swarm Axe, however you want to say it. And the issue is that they don't need to worry, like, let's say Mira's sitting there. She doesn't have to worry about a depletion of Brumacs. She'll sit there like, oh, we're really taking a hit on the left side. Let's send in a Brumac just to clear some things out. And our right side is doing pretty good, but let's make sure we have the ground we need. We're the ones in control. Send out 2 Corpsers just to be safe. It's going to be like that. The Swarm, on the other hand, they're going to be, and again, like, they think a little different. They're not going to be talking like this, but they're going to be like, we have a few Swarmax, but we can't waste them on just going through and getting mowed down by some of the small fries. We can't afford that. These need to be used when we can use them. So I would say the Swarmax are definitely more powerful than Brumox, but there's a limited amount of them. So it kind of ends up as at an equal point. You have power, but you minus how many you have. And then when it comes to the other Brumox, you kind of have their normal power, but there's more of them. Now, Corpsers and Reavers. The Hive Beast is going to be something that's going to take a lot of work. There's a decent amount of Reavers. There's not a lot, but I'd say they have pens of them down near Nexus. They definitely have Reavers on standby. Corpsers, they definitely have more of those than they do for Brumox. So, I mean, if they threw all of their Corpsers and Reavers at it and a few Brumox, it would be a close fight. I personally, for their large units, I gave them both a point on that one. I think they both would have an equal chance. So that one's a tie. I really couldn't decide who would win it because it seems like there's a lot more power for the Swarm with their large amount of creatures and, Swarmax, the High Beast, and they could probably make more of those Swarm Beasts. But the problem is that the Locust have numbers on their side. Granted, they're not as powerful as a Swarmax or the Hive Beast, but if you can keep pumping out, like let's say you have like 3 10s and you have 7 5s. Well, 7 times 5 is going to make 35. 10 times 3 is 30. 35 beats 30 in the end. I'm not saying that they would win, but in a numbers game, if you have the lower number, but you still have more of the lower number, you can still beat the higher number. So I gave this one a tie. It was a close one, and I just couldn't make up my mind on it. Next up, I have the leadership, which is closing this out. Now, for the leadership, I took some liberties when it came to the Swarm just because we don't fully understand everything for them yet. So what I have down for leadership when it comes to the Swarm is the Hive Mind. Now, not Reyna hooked up to things, but like the pseudo Hive Mind that they seem to already have where they can communicate somewhat with each other, not on a high level, but can definitely, you could say, sense one another. And then I also have high-level Scions because they are brought back. Their mental level might not be the highest at all, but I do feel if they're able to understand guns, they can at least understand on a structural level of hierarchy, hey, I'm a Scion and I'm better than you who are also a Scion. I outrank you as a Scion. Kind of like that. Like there's an alpha male Scion. Because I don't think that the Scion we saw was the one that lost his hand and was talking. I don't think he was able to talk before Reyna. So, and I'm just guessing that. I don't think it's ever been proven. So I'm going to say that he was like an alpha Scion at the time. And then when we have the Locusts, I have Mira and Rom/Karn. Now I'm doing the E-Day Locust. So Rom and Karn were confirmed to both be taking up their own stances on different parts of the globe during this time. So I am going to put Karn in this. Scourge is running around doing his own thing at the time. He is definitely doing things in the background, but during E-Day, we already know that Scourge is in the background and he's handling stuff with the priests, while Rom and Karn are up there causing all the carnage. So when it comes to the leadership between these sides, I really do want to say that the Locusts have this one lock and key. Mira isn't really like the most, I don't want to discredit her. She's not like a scale of 1 to 10. She's not a 10 for leadership. She's probably sitting at like a 7.5, 8. Like the Locust will listen to whatever she says, but that doesn't mean her plans are always the best plans. You can tell that when Srock, however you want to say his name, was running around as general, he wasn't the brightest guy. He wasn't the brightest tool in the crayon box. He wasn't at all. He was not the best. Rom was thinking better than he was. And I'm not saying Rom's an idiot, but I think we can agree we've met smarter characters than Rom in the series. When it came to Karn was pretty much just taking orders from Rom. It made it seem in Judgment that they were on the same level, though I think in Rise of Rom it is stated like Rom's the one giving him orders on what he has to do. So I'm going to say leadership-wise probably goes to the Locusts, just because I might have discredited them just now and some people might hate me, but Mira and Rom were definitely running things pretty tight when it was coming to it, taking out leadership and cutting the heads off snakes when it came to the cog. And even though the Swarm may not have that built structure, I have a good feeling they would figure some way around it. Like, oh, they're all coming out of this area. Let's get some corpsers, tunnel in, get in there, and just blow the place up. That's probably the plan they would come to. I don't think they would think too far ahead of what's in there, but they would think, yeah, we need to take care of this problem now. So with that being said, I'm going to give leadership to the Locusts, and you can probably tell, because I'm going to have the numbers set up right here telling you who's doing what. The Locusts would win this, in my opinion. Now, again, this is the E-Day Locusts against post-4 Gears of War 4. Post-4 Gears of War 4. That sounds weird. Post-Gears of War 4. Now, when it comes to what's going to happen in Hivebusters, I forget what the name of the book is going to be. I think Ascension is what it was called. And Gears 5, we don't know how it's going to be built. They could be just on a global scale at this point, just outnumbering the Locusts. We don't really know. But I can say this, when all that comes out, I'll do a revamped edition of this, and I'll put things into consideration. But for right now, the Locusts would win. Their numbers are just way too up there. During E-Day, they unloaded a shitload of people. I can tell you right now, the Locusts would just stomp them. Now, again, when it comes to certain matchups, like let's say like a Pouncer was going around and taking out Infantry, and it gets sniped down, and then you have a Hive Beast bust out, and he's wiping things out. 5 Brumaks are sent in trying to take it out. You know, that's a situation all on its own. But just comparing everything and then putting it in an aspect of them going into a fight, I really do think the Locust would win it. So, with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this video. I've wanted to do something like this for a while, kind of taking on two factions against each other or explaining factions, because there are actually a lot more than you think in the Gears franchise. So if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, really. I'm definitely going to be fighting off a cold for a while, because when I get sick, it lasts for like a month, but it doesn't happen too often. That's the good side. So if I don't have a video up next week, I'm sorry, but it just got too bad. This right now is like a limit for me. I wasn't even planning on recording, because you can probably tell by pauses and everything, things aren't working up here as quick as they should be. So again, like, comment, subscribe, hit a notification bell, get the word out about these. I greatly appreciate it. And if you want to see what the next video is, there'll be a poll up on Twitter. You guys have a great one. Cody Booker for Gear Talk signing out. Have a beautiful one.